Did you get the thing?
Yes, I got the thing.
Feed the dog?
Yes, I fed the dog.
Did you download the episode?
Yes, I downloaded the episode. What's up with the questions? Can we just go, please?
Permit me here and now to promise as a good comrade and a fellow artist that I will not report any of this, whatever it is, to the police.
Welcome to Abandoned Albums, the documentary podcast. Each week, our intrepid group of researchers and archivists sift through the album crates of the world, finding those records that may have been lost over time. Our team also seeks out up-and-coming artists with work we feel you should know about. When we're lucky enough, the artists swing by Thunderlove Studio to chat with our hosts Keith R. Higgins and Jeff Calhoun about those albums and their careers as a whole. Sit back, relax, and thank you for joining us.
There's gonna come a time when the clock stops on a dime and you vanish without a trace. So what will you leave behind? What will they remember you by besides a picture of your face?
Ryan Allen, a multifaceted musician from Detroit, Michigan, has been an active and influential figure in the music scene since the early 1990s. Allen has been a part of too many groups to mention, but here's a sampling: Destroy This Place, Friendly Foes, and Thunderbirds Are Now. Far from an exhaustive list, each of these bands showcase different facets of Allen's musical prowess and interests, ranging from indie and punk to hardcore and alternative rock. In 2011, Allen launched Ryan Allen and His Extra Arms. What began as a solo project has evolved into a full-fledged band, now simply known as Extra Arms. This project allowed Allen to explore a more personal and memoir-esque musical style, reminiscent of post-hardcore troubadours like Ted Leo and Bob Mould. Ryan is also involved in the band Big Life, a group of seasoned local musicians creating melodic hardcore music inspired by Dischord Records' Revolution Summer era. Big Life's sound draws influence from bands like Dag Nasty and Fugazi. But wait, there's more. Ryan is also involved in the band Speed Circuit and a side project called Bracken with friend Kathleen Bracken. Ryan Allen's career illustrates a dedication to evolving and experimenting within the realm of music, making him a distinctive and respected figure in Detroit's rich musical landscape. We can now add writer to the list of things Ryan Allen excels at. In the fall-winter edition of Remember the Lightning, a guitar pop journal, Volume 2, Allen penned the piece, The Ties That Bind Hardcore Punk and Power Pop. The piece draws a direct line from the Beatles to Black Flag. After running a half marathon, Ryan stopped by Thunderlove Studio recently to chat with Keith about the article and the whole of his music career. Here is their conversation.
It's just the normal noises in here.
There's nothing that gets clicks these days than a beef.
Yes, I know. I hate that shit. But we're not here to talk about that. Thank you, Ryan, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
You are a songwriter, musician, writer. Tell our listening audience a little bit about Ryan Allen.
Well, I mean, I grew up in a musical family. My dad's a musician, so I was, pretty turned on to music at a young age, and had access to instruments at a young age as well. I didn't, I wouldn't like say that I was like the child prodigy playing, Mozart at 6 years old or anything like that. But, my dad had bands when I was a kid, and, I'd hear them practice and see them play, occasionally. So it was like a very normal thing for me to grow up around instruments and be exposed to music, and I would say, around 1990, 1991, 1992, when I was, 11, 12 years old, I really got super into music. I was, the right age for Nirvana to kind of just like bowl me over and, open the doors to, all that kind of like early Seattle stuff. And then, it just kind of went from there, right? Like you read one book about Nirvana and they tell you pretty much who to listen to in the book, and so I just was like, all right, cool. I should probably buy Sonic Youth CD and a Dinosaur Jr. CD and a Sebado CD. And then, as you kind of continue on, you find old music and new music. And yeah, so I've just been like a very like avid, rabid consumer of music for 35 years or something, I guess. And but probably around the same time I picked up a guitar and started learning songs and, trying to figure out how to play. And my dad played, so he'd show me chords and teach me how to play, I think the first like riff I ever learned was Shine by Collective Soul.
Wow.
And, I learned, early Pearl Jam songs and whatever. So eventually, that happens and you start saying like, I could probably put three chords together and write my own song. So as soon as I did that, like the all bets were off and I just fell in love with songwriting. So, that's kind of been my main focus and passion since, probably I was like 12 or 13 years old, was trying to just write music. So yeah, I mean, that's like a very like somewhat long-winded, but still simplified version of the story. And yeah, so now I play, my main band is called Extra Arms, and it's like a energetic power pop band. I was in a band called Thunderbirds Are Now. That was kind of like the band that I got to like, tour and see the world and, get some like, nice coverage and press in certain magazines and blogs and things like that in my 20s, I guess, and then that kind of fizzled out, as is hard to sustain, on the road and things like that. But I never stopped, writing songs, doing bands and things like that. So yeah, that's a little snapshot of me.
That's your little abandoned albums wiki entry.
Haven't you bothered me enough, you big banana head?
Afraid not, miss.
What is the first song you remember liking?
Wow. Gosh.
For me, I mean, you could ask me on any given day, but what's coming to my mind right now would be Elton John, Crocodile Rock.
Okay. That's a good one. Fun, You know, weird. What the fuck does crocodile rock mean? I'm sure as a kid you're just like, what? I feel like Here Comes the Sun, maybe. Because my dad was a big Beatles fan. And there's just something so like almost, it's not a nursery rhyme, but it almost feels like it's written for a child to appreciate in a way, it's just like, here comes the sun, man, like it's just so simple and like inviting and positive, like it just feels like hopeful. And I think I even as a kid, I sort of like got that about that song,
Listening to you say that now, and I had never ever considered it from that perspective, and I am in complete agreement with you.
Well, yeah, thanks. I mean, yeah, it's like a kid's music, like it's just so simple and pretty, and the guitar line feels almost like it's like when you're of a certain age and you hear things like, I don't know, like Puff the Magic Dragon or something, like it's not too far removed from that. You're like, oh, this is like definitely a song for a kid because it's about a dragon, but Here Comes the Sun, it is in that same folky kind of like,
absolutely.
Yeah, it just drew me right in. And so yeah, I think I could be wrong. It could be like Jump by Crisscross for all I remember.
In your essay From Scream to Sing, in the most recent copy of Remember the Lightning, a Power Pop journal, you draw a direct line from hardcore to power pop.
I try.
You did a really effective job. I thought you did a good job. My question is, could we make the same direct line from the Beatles to Black Flag?
I think so. I've been known to say that the Beatles are the first punk band.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, you listen to it and early Beatles, it's raw, right? Like, I mean, if Chuck Berry is an influence on punk and Chuck Berry is an influence on the Beatles, then the Beatles are certainly they're a band, first of all, and there's the youthful kind of abandonment thing going on. John's vocals were, not tame whatsoever. He could sing very like beautifully if he wanted to, but his the sort of like gravel in his voice, that kind of like raspiness that he had. There's a through line from John Lydon to Billy from Green Day, obviously Kurt Cobain, so yeah, I don't think that there's really much different, aside. The Beatles were a band in this, it's 1977 or 78, with the same kind of like approach. They might have sounded closer to the Ramones than, whatever, like psychedelic, and I think too, like punk to me is like more of an approach than a sound, and I think with the Beatles, they did whatever they wanted to do. They were totally like unshackled. They were 100% willing to like, take risks and, jump from genre to genre and do things that were unprecedented, and that to me is punk as well, like, so yeah, it's all in there, the formula for what came after comes before. It's just tweaked and, seen through different eyes and different experiences,
Yeah, for sure.
and I think there's melody to Black Flag songs too, like it isn't your traditional kind of melodies, but Rise Above, for example, is as catchy to me as Hold My Hand. It's just a different way, or I Want to Hold Your Hand. Hold my hand.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Huh. I'd never thought of it like that. That's interesting. In your article, you lean heavy into, not heavy, but you highlight one of my favorite bands, The Replacements, as well as Husker Du. Do you think there's a regionality to hardcore? And do you think as a Midwesterner in Detroit, you were more exposed to, obviously you were more exposed to that sort of punk rock, hardcore, however we want to label it, but were you also exposed to other areas of the country?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely hardcore especially has a regionality to the sound somewhat. You know, the LA hardcore scene with Black Flag kind of being the, you know, the main focus, but even like Meat Puppets, you know, who are from Arizona, but, you know, it's kind of like out there in the West. And all three completely different sounding bands for sure. Dead Kennedys, you know. But there was kind of this like surfer guy kind of, you know, or just like, it's just like a different vibe, you know, whereas like the New York hardcore scene was way more tough, you know, and violent, you know, to an extent, and way more, you know, kind of like intimidating, you know, intimidation, Cro-Mags and, you know, 25 to Life later on and things like that. So, you know, so obviously there's similarities, and I don't think you get a Cro-Mags without a Black Flag, but definitely like Madball and these types of bands from New York were like gonna kick your fucking ass, you know. And then the DC bands were way more sort of like art, kind of artistic, I suppose. You know, they still had aggression and things like that, but like there was also like some humor. Like if you listen to early Minor Threat stuff, like the songs are pretty funny, you know, because they're just sort of like, they were kids, you know, they were so young when they were in that band. But like that's kind of my favorite sort of hardcore is the DC stuff, because it's, you know, I don't know, there's a little more inclusivity kind of going on within number one, and then I think those guys were all into a lot of different kinds of music, you know, and obviously as like they got older in their bands, you know, the bands post like Minor Threat and Rites of Spring evolved, you know, they did more like experimental stuff. I mean, Fugazi is a great example of that. And then, you know, there's the Detroit hardcore scene, which is a kind of its own thing too. Cleveland kind of as well, where it's like more working class, hard, you know, Rust Belty kind of thing, where like Negative Approach, for example, where, you know, they would play with all of those bands, you know, and they could play with all those bands, but there was something about their stuff that was like, you know, very, I think, emblematic of, you know, the city of Detroit, which is known for being kind of, you know, rough around the edges, for sure. And especially when they were active the first time around, you know, like it was a scary place. And so they were kind of a scary band, you know. I mean, John Brannon is like a very intimidating and like really like intense frontman, you know. So I do think where the music comes from informs the sound and informs the scene. Growing up in Detroit, one thing, I mean, I was a little too young to see any of that stuff firsthand, you know. So I didn't see Negative Approach in 1988 because I was 8 years old. But as I got a little bit older and got, you know, into high school, a lot of music that I really started getting into was from Canada, because our alternative rock radio station in Detroit was actually located in Canada, in Windsor, which is just right across the Detroit River. You know, I could get there in like half an hour from my parents' house when I was a teenager. And I actually ran there this morning because the half marathon that I ran it's the only international half and full marathon in existence. You run from Detroit over to Canada and then back again. It's kind of cool. But anyways, so a lot of bands that I probably would not have heard if I grew up in Tampa Bay, Florida or something, I heard because of the radio station, just the regular alternative rock station that would play Weezer and Foo Fighters and whatever, would also play this band called Sloan, who I really love, a band called Thrush Hermit, Super Friends. Just like a bunch of like great, Eric's Trip, another great band that was on Sub Pop back in the 90s. So yeah, in the 90s, a lot of the alternative and like indie rock that I liked was from Canada. And I would say, yeah, the proximity to, the country certainly helped me find out about those bands. And all those bands are very pop oriented. So like that was like something that was influencing my songwriting as a teenager and still does to this day.
Sure. Were you a Tragically Hip fan at all?
I would say no, only because I thought at the time, I guess, that they were kind of corny, but they would play like End of a Century, for example, which is like such a great song. They play that on the radio station. They play a lot of that stuff. And I liked it. I never saw them. I never bought any of their records. Now I think I appreciate it way more than I did probably as a kid. But yeah, they kind of just seemed like they were like, they were obviously like super mainstream, in Canada, so maybe at the time I was like, oh, like they're too popular, so I can't like them,
Sure.
That
makes sense.
That kind of dumb thing. But I hope I answered your question. I feel like I did.
You did. I never understood why they couldn't break here in the States, and I think after a while they're just like, fine, fuck it, we'll just be big in Canada.
Why try? And I just, because I think too, like there's two things. I actually think I have an answer. One is that they're way too literate, and Americans don't like that. Really.
No.
And number two, they're too Canadian. Well, you hear a band too, like The National, who I think totally sounds like, to me, there's a direct lineage between the hip and what they do, So maybe it was just like, a little before it's time for Americans to get into. But yeah, it's funny. I was traveling for work maybe like 6 years ago, and I had to go to Burlington, Ontario, which, growing up in Detroit and being close to Toronto, I would go to Canada quite a bit. But I went on this work trip and we stayed in this hotel, and there was just like framed photos of the Tragically Hip everywhere, like framed concert photos, just like Tragically Hip, Sky Dome, 2001, just like, it's just like in a hotel, no context. It wasn't like, they stayed here or, no. It wasn't any of that. It was just like the godfathers of Canadian rock should, they've earned their right to have a framed photo in the lobby of this hotel.
When you're stuck in a maze, when you're a rat in a cage, are you feeling alright? When all you do is complain, if you're hit by a train, are you feeling alright? Feeling alright? Feeling alright? Feeling alright? When you feel inside out, when you scream and you shout, are you feeling alright? When you rattle your brain, if you're crashing a plane, are
when we talk about being literate, with all due respect to both genres, be it hardcore or power pop, I wouldn't say they're literate as I consider literate. The focus of those two genres, at least lyrically, would be brevity, right?
Yeah.
Am I in the ballpark there?
Yeah, I think you're onto something for sure. I think in terms of hardcore, I would say instead of literate, I would call a lot of the best hardcore informed, in terms of like being informed on what's happening politically, at the time of whatever, record, quintessential hardcore record would have been, out in 1985 or whatever. But figuring out a way to take what can be complicated things, for people to wrap their heads around, racism, or, just like government, like, ineptitude, or whatever you want to say, and then figuring out how to sort of rally against it in a very straightforward way that people can rally around, and shout along to, and I think I'm all for clever writing and intelligent ways of communicating whatever the subject matter of the song might be. But I think as much as I like that, I also like really straightforward, really just plain spoken. This is what the song is about, man. Like, I'm going to tell you right now, like straight edge. It's about not drinking, like the end. And, power pop, sometimes I have to like hesitate because I can really get going on this. I think there's some really well done, smart power pop lyrics. There's some really fucking abysmal, embarrassing, like how is a adult singing this kind of shit, that like I'm
going to ask you for an example.
I would say Stacy's Mom by Fountains of Wayne is a good example of it. I just think that song sucks, and I think it's corny and lame. I think that they are good, and I think their first record is great. But just like joke music, is just like not my thing. I like funny music that's funny with kind of an edge to it, like the Smiths, or something like Morrissey's early lyrics are hilarious to me, like if a 2-ton bus kills the both of us or crashes into us rather to die by your side, such a heavenly way to die. Like that's like a hilarious line, Yeah. But anyway, yeah, I just think like back to the Beatles, I think at the time, when like I Want to Hold Your Hand came out, for example, or She Loves Me came out, like those are pretty like on the nose, straightforward, lyrics about kind of young puppy love, like whatever. I'm totally fine with that. Those guys were 23 years old when they wrote that song or something. You know what I mean? It's a lot different when you hear like the whatever modern equivalent of that might be sung by like a 50-year-old. It's like, I think it's just like, I don't know. I would be embarrassed if I had written something like that was, I don't know. Like, I'm not like much one for like, I'm going to get in the head of a teenage boy, but I'm like 55, like that to me is like not what I like or what I want to do, so
right.
Yeah, but at the same time, like there is literacy in power pop. I think that like John Auer and Ken Stringfellow from the Posies write really great lyrics. Obviously, Paul Westerberg, while you may not like necessarily categorize the Replacements as power pop, like they certainly inform power pop, and clearly he is like a phenomenal lyricist. I think Chris Murphy from Sloan is a really incredible lyricist. Yeah, man. I mean, I'm like looking at my records, which you can't see because they're behind the screen here, to try to figure out who else I want to name drop. But you get my point, right? Like,
I do. Yeah.
they're out there. It's just, I think it's really easy to write. And I don't want to negate myself. Like I said, I love simple and straightforward lyrics, but I think like also, I don't know. When I sit down to write lyrics, I'm trying to write as a 43-year-old person, from a 43-year-old person's perspective about what it's like to be a 43-year-old person living life, or however old I am when I'm writing, I suppose. But yeah, I'll stop because I can tend to ramble. But
I think there's some real merit to, again, the word brevity, but the old writer's credo, why say in 10 words what you can say in 5? You can be just as literate and powerful with 5 words as you can with 10 words.
Sure, for sure.
And I think that applies to song lyrics as well.
Yeah,
for sure.
I agree. I mean, what's that Queens of the Stone Age song that's like nicotine, Valium? Like I forget they're just like naming drugs.
Oh gosh. Don't know.
But it's like the song fucking rules, and there's like 6 words in the whole song. You know what I mean? It's cool.
I don't need to be on that list, you idiot. You piece of dirt. Who are you? I step on you. I clean you off with my shoes at night. I step on you, and then I throw away the shoe. And that shoe that I just threw away, that's worth more than your worthless life, mister. And I'm pissed because I loved that shoe, you dirt.
The New York Times does a podcast called The Daily, right? Today's Sunday read is called "Is Manskin?" I'm saying it wrong. Is Manskin the last rock band? The Italian group has become a global sensation by giving Gen Z a taste of a genre that might have already taken its final breath. The writer's name is Dan Brooks, and he mentions something about, we're close enough in age. You're a Gen Xer. You straddle the fence, but you're a Gen Xer. Yep. We are conceivably the last generation to be able to differentiate genres and even subgenres. Like, he makes the analogy, which I thought was fair. Jazz, when I was a kid growing up, was just jazz. I couldn't differentiate different types of subgenres of jazz or anything like that. However, if you wanted to talk about the difference between REO Speedwagon and REM and Bruce Springsteen and some of these other different subgenres of rock and roll, I certainly could. His main point was that kids today, it sounds like a Clint Eastwood get off my lawn comment, but kids today, they're just exposed to everything. They don't have that nuance. And in particular with both hardcore and power pop, it's those nuances and subgenres to some extent that feed a lot of the songs. Am I making sense?
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with that person's assessment, though. I think the genre is still very much a part of the conversation, especially with like Spotify and streaming culture, because you can dial up sometimes it's more mood than genre, but like, I don't think that there's that much of a difference between the two, like I was at a work retreat like last couple weeks ago and like, they were like, oh, we want to listen to like some music while we're like having our meetings. So they like put on like indie pop playlist, whatever, from Spotify. And it played, I don't even know what it was, or maybe it was like alternative rock playlist, and what it was labeling as alternative rock or indie rock or whatever it was like not the alternative or indie rock of, in my mind, but it certainly, there was a continuity between a lot of the music, it just wasn't what I would have defined, alternative rock or indie rock as. Like, to me, indie rock is Pavement and Sonic Youth and, Guided by Voices. Alternative rock is, Foo Fighters and Green Day. But like, there's new bands, so I suppose they just do whatever new bands or artists kind of rise to the top, kind of take the slot of the old bands that used to be relevant and nobody cares about anymore. But I do think that kids, like, I don't think my son, who's 12, knows the difference between rock and rap, but I don't know if he's got the subgenres thing down yet, but I do think it exists. And I don't know. I think you were trying to kind of like come back to like the hardcore thing.
Yeah.
There's subgenres of all that shit, of course.
Yes, there is.
Emo, post-hardcore, math rock, screamo, whatever. It's like nonstop, right? Crabcore. I think that's one.
What's crabcore?
I think it's like really terrible, like over processed metal, where like the band will do like a weird like synchronized like dance where they kind of look like crabs. I don't know. They like get really low and crouched. It's really weird. I feel like it's probably not as relevant right now. I was gonna say that the title of that podcast to me is just so clickbaity. It like annoys me, because like how the Black Keys are the only rock band that matters. The Hives release a new record. The Hives are the only rock band. It's like, okay, man, like you just want people to like, listen to your podcast or click the article. Like,
I'm with you. I don't think rock is dead at all, and I think it will never die. It just goes into hibernation for a while.
Yeah, in and out of fashion for sure.
Lost my wife, lost my house, lost my grandma too. I got punched in the mouth, but what are you gonna do? Fuck last year. Fuck last year. Fuck last year. Started off, it was great, it was wonderful. Now it's done, I'm too late, and feeling like a fool. Fuck last year. Fuck last year. Fuck last year. Just when you think you got it made, instead you're feeling so betrayed. I shed some tears, I faced my fears, so it's up from here, but fuck last year.
I think you did a really great job of connecting hardcore to power pop
Thank you.
in the article. I want to push back a little bit about how you end it. You end it by saying both hardcore and power pop share one thing in common. It's supposed to be fun and not some kind of high art. Now, here's my issue with that. Art is such a subjective phrase, right? What the fuck is it? It's different for me how I might. Let me ask you this. Let me just start. How are we shaping or defining high art?
Well, I think it's almost kind of like candy versus like a, 5-star chef making you a meal. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Both are satisfying, right? Like both can, fill you up and make you feel like you had a great experience, eating that, whatever it was. But I think with hardcore and power pop, I think the idea is to like give you that instant satisfaction of like, here's a catchy chorus or this is aggressive, and there's an instant gratification to both genres in a way, not to say all bands and all, not all power pop bands and not all hardcore bands fit into this categorization, right? But I do think that like some of the more, I guess like regarded stuff gives you that like immediate feeling where you're in or you're out pretty much within the first bite or listen, kind of like a candy bar. Like you don't have to eat the candy bar to the end to know if you're going to like it or not. You know what I mean? Like you take a bite, you're like, I like this candy or I don't. But with a 5-star meal, or some meal made by a chef who's, schooled in culinary, arts or whatever, like there's layers to it. You're like taking a bite. Oh, I get this note here. Let me take another bite. Oh, now I'm getting something different, And I think you could make the argument that this description also works for power pop and hardcore if you just reverse it.
No.
But that's kind of where I guess like I was going with it, is just that it's more like it doesn't make it any less like essential, however, I mean, I think that again, like if we're talking about like to me, some of my favorite music, most of my favorite music doesn't sound super labored over. You know what I mean? It seems like it just kind of like materialized in the way that it is, even if it was labored over. It doesn't sound like it.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of where I was coming from.
Thank you for the explanation. And that makes a lot more sense,
Yeah.
The analogy made between, let's say, a Snickers bar and, a 5-star Michelin meal.
Yeah.
Totally get that. Because they're both fucking valid,
Well,
they're both delicious.
You could find a bird's feather on the ground and duct tape it to a canvas and put it up on a wall and say, well, this is art, right? Like you're totally right.
Just ask Yoko Ono.
Yeah. Well, there you go. So you're totally right in that respect. I 100% agree that like art is subjective, high, low. Some people put like, I don't know, Evil Dead, for example, on like the same pedestal as, I don't know, like
The Godfather.
I was going to say like a Coen Brothers movie or something like that. So yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, it doesn't make, like, I think Step Brothers is like the most fucking hilarious movie I've ever seen. But I also appreciate, film that is much more, meticulously constructed. So there's room for it all.
So in addition to being a writer, you are in a band. How many bands are you in?
Well, right now I play in 3 bands. Like I said earlier, Extra Arms is kind of like my main band where I'm the songwriter, singer, kind of like de facto lead dude. But there's 3 other guys in the band: Ryan Marshall on bass, Jordan Wright on guitar, and Daniel Stover on drums. And we just finished tracking our 4th record, actually. So we're in the mixing phase now, and that'll come out next year, and I'm super excited about it. And then I'm in a band called Big Life, and in that band I play guitar and I sing a little bit, but it's more in that like 80s Discord hardcore kind of sound. So like Dag Nasty, Gray Matter, Minor Threat, early Husker Du, and it's a little more aggressive, and that's me with Dan Nixon on vocals, Jordan Von Zinda on drums, and Sean Gouvreau on bass.
Let's expand and burn for air. I long for release, but it's never
in two of my bands, there's a person named Dan. In two of my bands, there's a person named Jordan. And there's two Ryans and extra arms. So it's kind of funny where the same names are in both my bands. And whenever I talk about them, my girlfriend's like, which one are you talking about? I can't just say Dan or Jordan. I have to like Big Life Jordan. But anyway, so that's been fun. And we just started playing together last December, and we put out an 8-song EP this year. And it turned out really cool. Like it was like totally unplanned. Like nobody in the band knew each other. Like I knew everybody, and I kind of like brought us together, but it was really just like an experiment that turned out way better than I think anybody in the band thought. So that's kind of a thing. And then I just started playing with this band called Speed Circuit, and I'm playing drums in that band. And it's my buddy John Nelson, who I've been in some bands with in the past. He made a record over the pandemic and just wanted to like get some people together to play it. So I don't play on the recording. Actually, I am on a couple of songs on the recording. I should correct myself there. And then he asked me to play drums, and so I'm playing drums, and our friend Brent Moser is playing bass. So, 3 bands, pretty busy. I'm a dad. So, it can be challenging to make time for it all, but, sort of figuring it out. And the next gig that I'm playing, actually, all 3 bands are playing together. It's my birthday, so I thought it would be funny and slightly obnoxious, but mostly funny to see if I could play 3 times in a row. So that's what we're gonna try to do. So it should be fun.
Who's headlining?
Extra Arms is.
Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
So so it's been fun though. Like I feel like, like everyone, who was lucky enough to, survive the pandemic. I, like missed kind of like a couple years of being able to play live, like all bands pretty much did. And I don't know, more than that, I feel like in the last handful of years, really, like, I feel like I sort of didn't put as much value on friendships as I did in my earlier, kind of pre-kid life, I guess. And I really wanted to get back to, having friends, like people I could hang out with and rely on and make, music with or whatever, like I felt like I kind of, not like purposefully, but just like out of circumstance with the pandemic, of course, and just everybody isolating for a while. And then, I don't know, just like work and whatever, like just kind of like, and like I said, I stopped drinking. So I don't like go out to the bar and like hang with people really, but starting these bands and playing these bands and everybody in the bands, we're all like friends with each other. And even guys and like the guitar player in Extra Arms is in a band with the drummer of Big Life. You know what I mean? And they're like really old friends. So that's been kind of cool too. Like we kind of have this like little club or something of people. So it's worth it to me to like, try to figure out like, how am I going to make time for all this? Because I get to spend time with my friends, which has been really great for me. So musically very, fruitful and satisfying, but also just like on a relationship level, it's been really great to like have buddies again. Sorry, maybe that sounds depressing, but
no, not at all. No, I think it's something that I've learned doing this. The more musicians and artists that I've spoken with, that whole sense of community and how much it matters in the artistic world, Well,
especially as you get older too, man. Like, it's hard to get people out to shows right now. Like for like people my age, like who have kids and things like that, it's like they're they like ration up their like ability to go out, so if it's like, I got tickets to see whoever, that probably means that they're cashing in their one night out a month to go see, Dinosaur Jr. or something. And so your little show that you're playing at the dingy bar, down the street, they're like, I'll try to catch it another time, because I already went out this month. And now and I got to wake up early because my kid's got a soccer game at 8:00 in the morning or something,
Yep.
So it can be challenging, but like, I think, you're definitely right with the community. Like it's what kind of helps keep you going sometimes, so I feel lucky, that like I've been able to surround myself with musicians who are great musicians, but also like really good dudes, like good people. So that's a bonus.
That's got to be a tremendous bonus to not be surrounded by assholes.
Yeah. And I mean, I
both had those experiences, right?
I have, and I've also been the asshole. So, I can't sit here and pretend like.
God knows I have. I mean, not proud of it, but I can own it.
Hey, if you're not, I feel like if you're a musician, you're probably got to be a little bit of an asshole here and there, If there's got to be something about you. You're like, I really need.
I'm not a musician, so what's my excuse?
I don't know.
No,
I think we're all entitled to let our asshole flag fly here and there.
It's funny you mentioned about parents cashing in their chips. I don't have children. I have a dog and a cat, and I'm not married. And it still takes a lot to get me to go out.
Yeah, for sure, man. And especially,
post-COVID, it's hard,
Yeah.
It's not that I'm afraid of catching it. It's just, I don't want to increase the odds because it's still kicking around out there.
For sure, dude. I mean, I played on Friday with Big Life this past week, and I played on Tuesday with Extra Arms, and both shows, if you don't think about it at least once, you're just in denial, I guess. But the bands that we played with on Tuesday, they all were in masks, still like they were on tour. We played with Chris Farron and Mo Troper.
Okay,
I know Mo's been on your show.
Yep.
But they all were masked up, when they weren't on stage. And for small bands like Mo's band, like if one of them gets COVID and they have to go home, the whole tour is totally off. They're fucked financially. And they can't afford to have that happen. So I respect it, a ton.
For sure. Well, again, like I said, I love the article.
Thank you.
We are winding up. Pluggables. What kind of pluggables you got? You're on the Instagram.
Yep. You can follow Extra Arms on Instagram. It's just Extra Arms, at Extra Arms, I guess. You can follow Big Life on Instagram. It's at Big Life HC. And then Speed Circuit is also on Instagram at Speed Circuit Band, I think it is. And then Extra Arms .bandcamp.com, biglifehc.bandcamp.com, and then Speed Circuit. I think it's just Speed Circuit.bandcamp.com.
We will link to all of those in the show notes section.
Cool. Yeah. Check out all that stuff. And like I said, Extra Arms has a new record that's in the mixing phase. Big Life's probably going to track some new tunes soon. Speed Circuit's maybe going to do, more music down the pike. And then actually I just released something last Bandcamp Friday.
Oh, really? Okay.
It's a project that I did over the pandemic with my friend Kate, where I kind of wrote the songs, sent it to her. She wrote the lyrics, the melodies, all that stuff. And it's called Bracken, which is her last name. So if you go to brackentheband.bandcamp.com, there's a 4-song EP that you can listen to that's a little different than what I'm sort of like known for, I guess.
Welcome
it was like something that we worked on during the pandemic, and then we kind of were thinking we would go and like record for real. We just were doing like home recording demo kind of stuff. And then, the pandemic just kept going, and she lives a couple hours north of me. So we're far enough apart where we can't just hang out really. So our initial thought was we were going to like redo the songs in more of a studio. We never did. And then we just kind of forgot about them. And then last week I was like, we should release these as is, And so that's up there too. And yeah, I'm proud of that. And we're going to try to do some more stuff too. So not a band per se, but a project that, it's been pretty fun to finally get out there as well.
Awesome. Ryan, thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Sharing the stories. Great article, great piece, love it. And good job connecting hardcore to power pop, which is, I don't think, something that folks would connect.
For sure, man. I appreciate all the kind words and for having me on.
All right, man. We'll let you go get some sleep.
Yeah, all right. Thank you. I'm going to get stoned and eat a donut, and then I'll go to sleep.
I'll probably get stoned and just sit on the couch and watch TV for a little bit.
Hey, man, to each their own.
All right, man.
Have a good night. Thanks a lot.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
A big thank you to Ryan for finding the energy to join us for a chat. Extra special thanks goes out to S.W. Lorden for making it happen. Please check out the show notes for links to all of Ryan's work, as well as to Remember the Lightning, a Guitar Pop Journal Volume 2.
This episode of Abandoned Albums was written and produced by Keith R. Higgins. The show was recorded at Thunder Love Studios, where it was engineered by
Daphne Miller,
with help from
John Thomas.
Abandoned Albums was edited by
Mike Hunt.
The songs you heard during this podcast were I Don't Want to Die, Fun Guy, Feeling All Right, and FLY by Extra Arms. You also heard Personal Best by Big Life, and we finished the episode with The Bird and Everything Else by Bracken. You will find links to all of these artists' work in the show notes section. Please remember to support independent artists.
original music by Mike Pellegrino.
Our theme song is All I Want by Pete Belasco. In the opening of the show, the songs you heard were Livin' in a Dream by Archangels, Think Too Hard by Sid Straw, and Stronger Than Love by James Carr.
If you like what you've heard, please be sure to subscribe and leave us a rating. It really does help. Thanks for listening.
Grazie.
Bailey Leaf,
Rob Janicki,
Mike Pellegrino,
Farina Bella,
Ronnie Barnett,
S.W. Loudon,
Michael Janicki, Peyton Janicki, and our executive producer,
Rufus Thunderwolf.
Abandoned Albums receives funding from Kramerica Industries. Protect what you value. Kramerica Industries, made in America by Americans, mostly, and headquartered in America. Kramerica.com.
And now, until we meet again next time, I remain as always, obediently yours.
Abandoned Albums is a production of Paw Print Media.